Hello friends, so we are in Studies in Theatre MOOC program and today we are carrying on our discussion of contemporary theatre. So we have already seen various kinds of contemporary theatre styles in previous lectures like site specific. Moving on to the further discussion of this topic, today first of all we will look at some current trends in contemporary theatre. One is immersion. Immersion, adaptation of virtual reality, technological advancement, and sustainability practices are some important trends which are shaping the contemporary theatre. Now, what is immersion? Immersion means some kind of a method or some kind of atmosphere that is created in theatre on the stage around the audience because of which they feel immersed in the performance. They become part of the action which is visible around them. This can be done through sounds, lights, and various kinds of technological equipment. Then adaptation of virtual reality, wherein digital intervention is done to incorporate various technological advancements in theatre. That is also an important aspect. Then sustainability practices, how to create sustainable productions where we are putting in less money and generating more and more possibility for future consumption. That is also a current discussion topic in contemporary theatre. First is musical theatre. It is a type of theatre that includes dialogue, singing with music, and acting in a narrative structured form. It requires songs and musical numbers, dance and choreography. So this kind of theatre has given space to indigenous performance cultures like of Africa, India, South America, and indigenous performance cultures in America or wherever in different parts of the world. Music, song, dance can be brought on stage. Whatever can be told and narrated through these kinds of genres, that theatre, those cultures, those performance cultures have found a very strong presence through this. And off-Broadway style is visible across the world in various shapes, various hues. This is also an aspect of music theatre. Then you have documentary theatre. It is a kind of performance that relates to real life events. Interviews, journalism, documentary films, and non-fiction storytelling are defining features of it. It covers real issues like justice, human rights, social reformation, politics, and personal anecdotes. You know, students, this kind of theatre, documentary theatre, is very handy for especially creating a documentation of those things, those experiences, those events, those actions in real life which may go unnoticed or which may not have been properly documented. So this theatre, in addition to the fact that it entertains and sends a message out to the audience, it also becomes a method of documenting certain resources, certain real things which may get lost because they are not recorded anywhere else. For example, through anecdotes of people who do not know how to write or who do not know how to get published or who do not have any access to expressing what has happened to them. Through anecdotes, their stories, their life journeys can be recorded and documented. Similarly, for human rights, for social reformation, for political issues, various expressions can be used, various methods are present in documentary theatre that can give a space to people's voices, people's experiences, and create very significant artistic productions which are not only the entertaining things for the audience but are also learning things. Because you can have education through them, you can also use them as evidences, you can also use them as testimonials for things which may not have been recorded properly if they are wrong, or some people have been wronged, etc. Then you have dance theatre. It is a form of performance that employs musical beats, choreography, and body movements. It tells a story through spoken words and musical cues, and in conjunction with visual elements and effects, sound effects. It tells a story through spoken words, musical cues, and in conjunction with visual element and effects. So there is no dialogue, there is just music, there is dance. You can call it dance drama also. It's in the contemporary style, we call it dance theatre, because dance dramas were written to be performed as dance dramas, but dance theatre has a very different kind of, or a very trendy kind of tonality around it. The whole ambience is very postmodern. It is written through to be expressed through dance movements, physical movements, and other dance dramas, like, in India, for example, we have a lot of dance drama tradition where action or storytelling is done through dance. That also can be studied as part of this, as the picture that you can see is visible in front of you, and this picture is one of the Indian pictures that is giving you how Indian dances are also part of this kind of theatre. Then we have monologist theatre. In the context of theatre, monologists are those performers who excel in their solo abilities to perform different events, from poetry to perform personal stories and social commentaries. Monologists grab avenues of festivals and traditional stages of performance to showcase their storytelling abilities. So, it's uh, people who are good in storytelling, people who are good in single-handedly carrying forward the performance on stage. They have a good chance in this kind of theatre culture. And these days, when there is a lot of culture of clubs in European countries as well, because this culture of performing in the clubs only existed in Western world for a long time, but this kind of culture is visible in country like India and other countries. Now, youngsters have a very good opportunity if they are good in storytelling, if they are good in narrating, if they are good in recreating something through their language, or they can present a sketch on social, or a social commentary through their actions, through their voice, through their words. They have a good opportunity in this kind of theatre. So you just have to have a mic and an audience and your own content, and you can start performing as a monologist. So this monologist theatre is a very big avenue. It starts with open mic, where people generally go to just express and perform whatever they can. There is no end to it. It is an informal method of getting trained into monologism. Then monologist starts taking shape, and the person starts carving herself into a performer and who can come on stage professionally. And now there are very successful young performers, senior performers, who travel the world for the sake of monologist performances. Puppetry theatre is another addition to the discussion of contemporary theatre. Now, puppetry theatre, I've put it in contemporary discussion because it is one such genre which has always existed. So it has always been contemporary. It is not something traditional. If we call it traditional and put it aside, then it will be an injustice to this kind of theatre, because this theatre is present in tradition, in classical system, in classical theatre, in traditional theatre, in modern theatre, in postmodern theatre, all kinds of theatres. This culture, this particular puppetry theatre has figured. Puppets are there from different parts of the world. In different parts of the world, there are puppet theatre tradition. Like in Japan, you have No and Kabuki theatre tradition. In India, you have these shadow puppetries. Puppets can be made from any object: wooden, leather, fingers, cloth, strings, even robotics are used for creating puppets. So puppetry is a very old tradition and it survives all tests of time because there is always a scope for creating innovations in puppets. And it is something very unique, something very personal when any intelligent artist makes certain innovations and creates his or her own stories in this puppetry, and creates modern innovations, tries to make it more contemporary by changing the dress style, by bringing in stories of modern world, contemporary world, world politics, national politics, regional politics, cultural issues. So this can be explored in a very rich way by whoever wants. And although there are some very restricted paradigms also in the traditional puppetry culture, where one is supposed to stick to certain rules, regulations and stories and contents. But even then, puppetry becomes a very attractive thing for those who have this knack of using their fingers to make the puppets dance, and through a certain kind of training, which is not a very detailed training, but if one's passion is there, one can start this and try one's hand in puppetry. It is generally controlled from behind the stage. The puppeteer is not visible, but in some cultures the puppeteer is visible, as in kabuki tradition. Sometimes you can see the puppeteer, sometimes it's just the hands that are visible, sometimes the entire puppeteer is also on the stage along with the puppets. So this is, ventriloquism is also one kind of puppetry in which the ventriloquist uh, is an artist who can create two sounds or two kinds of sounds, speech patterns, while not moving her lips much, so that the audience can have the feel that it's the puppet in the hand that is speaking the other person's voice along with the ventriloquist. And it's also an interesting aspect which is very popular, and you can see people visible in different kinds of programs attempting the ventriloquism. Then street theatre. Now it's a performance that doesn't use traditional stage. It usually takes place in public spaces, streets, parks and roads. It uses several styles and genres like mime, busking, clowning, puppetry, circus acts, nukkad nataks, etc. Students, this particular theatre tradition or culture or trend has a very, very strong presence in the entire world, and each part of the world has created its different face by cultural intervention, by regional intervention. The street theatre has taken a different hue, different nuance in different theatre cultures across the world. For example, in India, it's street theatre present in the form of nukkad nataks. Nukkad natak means any play that is performed on road where there is an intersection, or a place where roads meet and people can gather on that corner. They can sit and watch in nukkad natak in a very informal way. Now, any street theatre can involve busking. Busking is again a physical kind of theatre where people dance in a certain style, where they have a very free style kind of dancing. They evolve, they innovate their own method, and you can see a lot of videos of buskers these days on Instagram and other channels. Miming is something that it is something which is expressed through a painted face without words. It's through the expressions and gestures that we mime. Clowning and puppetry and circus acts are part of street theatre. Now, street theatres are very handy for various reasons, because very little resources are required. You don't have to organize. Generally, all the street theatres are watched free of cost. They are available for people to be watched free of cost. So it's people's theatre. in a very specific sense, because it involves people in theater. It encourages audience to come and watch because it's free, and it can happen anytime. You know, these days we have in malls and shopping areas, there is dancing that takes place. That arena is also being used for kind of a street performance. I will not say rather theater. Now, in street theater has been used by political movements, freedom movements, and activism, protest movements. It has been used a lot. In India, Badal Sarkar created a very significant intervention in street theatre, which he calls his style of third theatre, and he has done a lot of innovations in it, and you can see how his body of work has empowered the idea of performing on street as a very sanctified, very powerful, and a very serious business. Street theatres are generally done without any specific directions of space. The actors are trained into converting through their gestures and through their body movements a kind of blocking, a spontaneous blocking on stage or the street or the platform or wherever they are, garden or campus, wherever they are. The audience starts gathering all around the performance. Generally, the beauty of this performance is that audience surrounds the performer or the performance space in a circular style. Now, this circular style of audience is a core to the seating arrangement. Even if there is no demarcation of where does the performance space begins and where does it end, even then there is a certain invisible space boundary that is respected by the audience, which has generated on its own, which has gathered on its own without any formal invitation, and it is encircling the performer in a circular fashion, and that looks a very beautiful kind of a scenario. So these are, I know a lot of traditional spaces in our country, for example, Madari and Jamura tradition, where Madaris show different antics, roadside magicians, jugglers. These people also are part of street theatre or street performance culture, and they have always been there, and they are going, although they are facing a lot of difficulties these days competing with so many media that are present all around us, but they also should be considered contemporary because they have stuck to surviving in the urban spaces also, and they are very much part of the theatrical topography of modern world as well. Then looking at the virtual and digital intervention in theatre, these theatre cultures are very significant. Although I will be taking up this discussion in an entire lecture, in a separate lecture, but still, because I consider this a part of the contemporary theatre, therefore it is important for me to mention it here. Now, virtual and digital mediums are also theatre mediums. With technological advancements, theatre performances are evolving so much. The emphasis on technology has become very enhanced, and a lot of effects can be created on the audience with the use of virtual and digital intervention. Now, there are a lot of debates around it, like uh, there are people who consider it a threat to theatre, there are people who consider it a kind of a welcome change in theatre, there are people who are skeptical about it, and there are people who are very much passionate about it. So there are a lot of debates around it. It is not something very much absolutely accepted, but it is a discussion that is important for us to touch upon, because we should inquire into its aspects. What is this about? So digitally we can create so many effects in theatre. How theatre can become part of our discussion. Sorry, how digital technology can be part of theatre discussion. How can it impact the characters presentation on stage? How can it impact the colors, properties, the whole atmosphere on stage. So these are certain aspects of virtual and digital intervention in theatre. Then augmented reality and virtual reality are the results of the digital intervention. Now, augmented reality is the reality that is supported and enlarged and enhanced with the help of digital intervention. And these trends are known to have more impact on the art and craft of theatre performances. Instead of touching the soul of theatre as a genre, I believe that augmented reality version and virtual reality method have actually enhanced the craft of theatre and the art of theatre, because they rely heavily on virtual effects to enhance the performance on stage, and use of immersive technologies through which audience can feel immersed in the entire process of staging a particular text. This trend often therefore is used in theatres to bring creativity, very innovative atmosphere, seeking audience participation to intersect with not only mind and eyes, but also through their physical presence, their movement, their responses also at times. All these details will be taken up separately in my another discussion, but I am simply introducing this topic right now to you so that you have certain idea about it. And then students, we have experimental and devised theatre. These are quite new trends in theatre performance. These are known for expanding traditional understanding of theatre. Experimental and devised theatre are known to produce socially conscious performances covering several socio-political realities. So, if you have a political message, if you are looking for some propaganda to be disseminated, if you want to have a protest, if you want to assert a certain kind of agenda, then there is a lot of experimental and devised theatre possibilities for such a purpose. And in recent years, in the whole world, we have seen an upsurge in experimental and devised theatre, where in one place people are painting themselves in the colors of animals and caging themselves and putting on road and performing some antics inside the cage in order to send message out about the saving the dangers that are there to natural life. I watched a theatre in Stockholm outside the Nobel Museum. There was a experimental and devised theatre performance in which the activists were dressed as polar bears, and they suddenly, in a spontaneous way, they started walking in that courtyard outside the street courtyard outside the Nobel Museum, and the tourists who were present there, who were speaking very different languages, various languages, those tourists stopped to see what's happening. And the text that these people were using, the songs and the dialogues and the sounds that these people were creating, they were all in Swedish, but they could convey through their actions, through their intonation of voices, the concern about the polar bear. And people who were just passing by, they stopped there, they watched them. Some of them also participated in with them by moving in that circular fashion in which they were moving. So this is, an example of devised theatre. In devised theatre, generally some kind of prop is used, some kind of representation of a reality is used, and then that reality is shown to be disturbed for some reason or distorted for some reason through actions. In another protest that I remember, I saw that and some farmers protested when they were they were holding some animals in their mouth, rats and rodents, in order to showcase that they have they don't have food to eat. So it is also a kind of a devised theater performance. Then it's called as devised theater because it is devised through a certain non-theatrical objects and properties which become theatrical once they are part of that performance. Many a times such theater performances often get unnoticed as performances, and they are more or less signified only as either a protest or a propaganda. So because there is a very thin line in between these two spaces that this kind of theater is engaging with. Now next we have is these reference site that you can see the whole all the pictures that I have used and are involved from these websites. So students, I hope you have been able to understand that contemporary theatre is not a defined discipline or a genre for now, but I have chosen this nomenclature in order to incorporate various kinds of things that are happening around us in the world of theatre, which you come across and often feel puzzled where to place them or in which category you would like to discuss them. So this much for now in this lecture. In our further discussions, in our further lectures, I will be taking up other aspects related to this field. Thank you so much.